road coming to an end in Cleveland. Other places have already claimed the Super Bowl. I'll tell you why Steelers fans should back off today. So much to get to, man. I'm starting to fall for the Bills, too. BillsMafia, we'll talk about them. Patriots, you will get no love today. I'm going to tell you the three ugliest and three most beautiful things I've seen in the NFL so far through week 3. Thanks to Automagik for our intro music. Sounding wonderful as always. One of the better things happening in Cincinnati right now. We've got that first real slugfest slate of games coming up here in week 4. I heard someone say the men will be separated from the boys. I don't like that phrase. Kind of weird. Men and boys shouldn't be playing contact sports together. However, it is quite a slate. Thursday night we finally get a good one with Eagles-Packers. Thursday night football not always the best. Green Bay at 3-0, and no one really seems to be talking about it. That's weird. I don't know why that is. But also in that same division on Sunday at 4, you get Bears-Vikings. I think one of those two teams will be a wild card. And then there's the Detroit Lions. I've heard more than one person say the Lions are undefeated. I don't think 2-0-1 counts as undefeated, especially when that tie comes against the Cardinals, but only have to hear that for a few more days as they will play Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Lions will get stomped. That'll be fun. And then the NFC North going to be a lot of fun this weekend. And then the AFC, however, is where we're really going to be paying attention. The big one, 3-0 Patriots at the 3-0 Bills. We've been looking for 2 decades now for someone to slay that dragon in New England. The Bills aren't there yet. I think we realize that, but I also think we realize, or at least we think we do, Buffalo can play, man. That defense will punch you in the face. Leslie Frazier, the defensive coordinator there, been there for just a few years now, but been in the NFL forever. And Josh Allen, I got my first chance to watch him in a full game on Sunday. The dude can move. He's like Roethlisberger, except instead of fat, is that the word? Roethlisberger wasn't necessarily fat. He isn't necessarily fat. He's just kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. Large. He's a big mass. Josh Allen can move like him and get away from defenders like him, but he's not that brick wall, and the dude can fire the ball as well. The Bills got to be America's team this weekend, right? We're all sick of New England. I kind of think they're the reason we're now hearing about Antonio Brown every 12 hours. I'm sure as soon as this goes up, Antonio Brown will come up with something else to get our attention. People act like New England's going to roll everyone this year, and maybe they will, but the 3 teams they've beat, Pittsburgh week 1, Pittsburgh obviously not a good team, and especially not a good team now that Ben Roethlisberger is out. More on them in a second. But then the Jets and Dolphins, who the Jets without Sam Darnold are second worst in the league, in my opinion, only to the Miami Dolphins, who obviously have no interest in winning football games this year, which that's fine. I don't really blame them. What were they, 5-11 at best? But here's the thing with New England. I've always defended New England. I've always been against the guy or the woman who doesn't like teams that win a lot. I've always thought you should be mad at your team for not doing their job. If you look, I remember growing up, there were some Browns fans whose dads had taught them to hate the Broncos because of the drive and the fumble. Don't hate the Broncos. The Broncos did what they were supposed to do. Be mad at your own team. I've never really understood that logic. I've never really understood people hating New England. I guess I've understood it, but I didn't agree with it. But I'm to the point now where I'm just done defending New England. I think they've kind of shown their true color. It's one of those things, it's kind of like I talked about with Antonio Brown last week, and of course a million other things have come out since then. But the little things start to add up over time. Most recently, I think Bill Belichick's just a jerk. I'm surprised the Dana Jacobson did not get more play over the weekend. I'm sure a lot of you saw, she asked him about Antonio Brown, and he stared her down like they were in a schoolyard and he was going to punch her in the face. And Dana's great at what she does. I wish she would have just followed up. He stares her down like he's going to headbutt her. She should have said, man, do you not like that question? Do you not like being asked about the scumbag you signed and then released after one game? Man, Bill Belichick can suck it. I'm done with that guy, too. I'm done with all the football purists talking about what a genius he is. This is where I remind you that he had a losing record as an NFL head coach before Tom Brady became his starting quarterback. I'm not saying he might be the greatest coach of all time now, but man, did he get a lot of breaks, in particular by landing the greatest quarterback of all time, thanks to an injury. And here's the other thing that bothers me. Look, I get the Chiefs are such a force now offensively that the Patriots know, and the Ravens know, and whoever thinks they can compete with for an AFC championship knows they're going to have to win, most likely in a shootout. But New England didn't need to sign Antonio Brown. They were heavy Super Bowl favorites without him. They've never won a Super Bowl with a star wideout. Of course, they had Randy Moss, they had Wes Welker, but they've won Super Bowls in the past. Deion Branch, Troy Brown, most recently Julian Edelman out of Kent State winning MVP. I just don't get this idea that they think they can go out and do things and don't have to answer the question. Look, and if you're one of those football fans on Twitter who's like, well, you shouldn't ask him that 90 minutes before the game, I'll Venmo you for some Clorox to pour down your throat. I don't know. The role of journalists is to hold the powerful accountable, and I'm not going to get preachy here, but if you're defending Antonio Brown, who clearly, I'm not going to say no respect, maybe no respect, but a serious lack of respect for females, maybe you should start reevaluating your life. Maybe you shouldn't drink the Clorox, don't do that. But maybe start reevaluating how you decide to form your opinions. Maybe your football team winning isn't the most important thing in the world. You know, that team that you have no effect over, but you have their jersey, so you got to defend them and act like it's the greatest thing to ever happen when they win a game. Maybe chill out a little bit. I'm just tired of the Belichick stuff, and I've touched on this before too, but this idea that he doesn't have to answer questions. Dude, if you love football and you just want to coach football and not worry about all the drama that comes with it, that's great. That's fine. You can do that. Go coach high school football. Go coach Division II football. There's a reason you're a millionaire. There's a reason you have that sick boat that they show every offseason that you're hanging out on Cape Cod, and that's because you are a major player in this reality television show that we call the National Football League. Bill Belichick needs to check himself. I'm kind of over the whole idea that he thinks he can push people around. Man, I wish Dana Jacobson would have followed up and said, oh, did you not like that question, Bill? You think you should just get to move along? Bring a guy into the building who clearly is an idiot and not have to answer for it. I've seen Pittsburgh fans piling on this too. Look, I mean, Pittsburgh's a good organization. I know that. But they're not that innocent in all this, right? And I don't think they knew what we know now about Antonio Brown. But they knew that he was no choir boy. They didn't build this monster, but they didn't stop it either. Pittsburgh fans suddenly acting like the most innocent people in the world when it comes to Antonio Brown, as if they knew this was coming. And to an extent, they did. I think I mentioned this last week. I know people in Pittsburgh who, back before Antonio Brown was a real star, and these are Steelers fans. He had become a star in Pittsburgh, but wasn't like a national star, anything close to what he is now. And people in Pittsburgh just didn't like him. He was known for just kind of being a jerk around town. So, Pittsburgh fans, maybe go easy on acting like your organization is the most innocent thing in the world. They didn't build this monster, but they didn't stop it either. By the way, Monday Night Football, 6 days from now, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. 0-3 versus 0-3. Remember when they, Sports Illustrated once had them as the nastiest rivalry in football? Maybe they still are, but a lot of that's going to go away. Obviously, Vontaze Burfict in Oakland now. He threw his first punch of the season on Sunday. Good to see him getting comfortable in his new environment. But Pittsburgh, Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. If you're in a good mood, like in general, I just recommend avoiding that game. Someone's going to get their first win. Technically, Pittsburgh in last place based on a bunch of those little strength of schedule things. I don't know. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, 0-3 versus 0-3. Loser, as I put on Twitter, should have to drink from the nearby Ohio River. And if it's the Bengals, they should have to swim back to Cincinnati. If it's the Steelers, maybe you make them re-sign Antonio Brown and name him captain. That's going to be... I'm excited for that. Obviously, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, something that people in that region very much enjoy. And I, as a Bengals guy, am going to have fun with that. It's funny. So Mo Egger, who I haven't talked to in a while, probably at least a year since I chatted with him a little bit on Twitter, but he always used to tweet out when something terrible. Remember that NFL campaign that used to say football is family, and it would show like a family all hanging out and eating on Sundays, and the little kid's got the jersey on, and Grandpa's throwing him the football while Aunt Millie cooks up some potatoes and chicken. They used to run that campaign that football is family. Probably a good idea they got rid of that, right? With all the guys taking shots to the head, Antonio Brown celebrating when he gets released by Oakland, called his grandma because football is family. I think of that a lot with all the Bill Belichick stares down a female reporter in an uncomfortable manner. Football is family. Turn on the Fox pregame. Michael Vick on there. Remember when he took a 21-month break from the NFL to do time in federal prison? Let's gather the kids around and have them watch him on the living room floor on Sunday mornings. Football is family. How the potatoes looking, Aunt Sally? I defend a lot of young guys, college guys, because you change. You change as you get older. We've seen guys in college who did goofy stuff. I mean, that Peyton Manning stuff, right, where he mooned a trainer. Not a cool thing to do, but you're 21 years old. You're in that environment where you're trying to impress your friends. It's stupid. He's a guy who's obviously grown up. We've seen a lot of guys do dumb stuff in college. Carlos Dunlap, defensive end for the Cincinnati Bengals, fell to the second round because I think he got a DUI in college. Absolute model citizen in Cincinnati, does an anti-bullying campaign that he takes on the road with him, goes to schools every week. Great guy. Made one dumb decision. Plenty of people out there have had too many beers or too many glasses of wine or whatever and got behind the wheel. Not a smart thing to do, not an excusable thing to do, but doesn't make you a bad person when you do it when you're 22 years old. He fell to the second round because of that and ended up, I mean, he's an all-time guy now in Cincinnati, one of the sack leaders, making great money there, and is a great model citizen. I defend college guys because you change. Antonio Brown's in his 30s. He's not changing. Bill Belichick is got to be pushing 80 years old. He's not changing. This is who he is. He thinks he has the authority to talk down to people who question anything he does. Loves the money he makes, which is a direct result of that massive television deal, or all the massive television deals. But he does not want to stand at the podium and take questions from anyone that make him feel uncomfortable. Big tough guy, but can't take the questions that make him feel, oh, I don't like this. Remember when someone threw a shoe at George Bush? Again, not something you should do, but something I wouldn't be mad about seeing. He just doesn't want to be responsible for his actions. Drives me insane. Just wants to coach football. You're a millionaire, dude, because you're a star on a reality TV show. The other game that separates the men from the boys, as some folks like to say, in this one, I think I'm most excited for this one, and that would be Cleveland and Baltimore. Cleveland at Baltimore. I was surprised how much Cleveland fans panicked, and I get it because you blew it in week 1 against Tennessee. You could be 2-1. I don't know. Maybe you couldn't. You got blown out. But you're 1-2, which isn't terrible. But look, man, you guys went blow for blow with the defending NFC champions on Sunday night. I get the play calling should be better, and you hate, kind of like we saw with Cincinnati in week 1, you probably wouldn't have won had a few things gone differently. And with Cincinnati, I'm referring to that final phantom fumble call, which we still have not gotten an explanation for. But with Cleveland against Los Angeles, against the Rams on Sunday night, you feel like you could have won. And I think that's why it stings so bad. You wonder why you made that play call on 4th and 9 at the end. Maybe go to one of those two all-world wide receivers you had. I get why you're upset about it. But a win this week, fortunately for you, the AFC North is what, a combined 3-9? A win this week in Baltimore changes all of that. You take the lead for the division with a win. You're in the driver's seat, baby, like Dale Earnhardt. But a loss, and you're in big trouble. So a win, which I think everyone thinks is doable. By the way, Baltimore, I might have to eat crow on that one. They did look really good at the Chiefs, but we'll see. I'm still not a believer. I still don't think this is a sustainable system they're running. So a win in Baltimore, Cleveland, you're right back in it. You're on top. But a loss, that's where you got to start worrying. A loss to the Rams, all right, it's an NFC team, not a division game. It sucks because you're on Sunday Night Football for the first time in more than a decade. But really, at the end of the day, if you're going to lose a home game, that's one of the two you're fine with losing. You want to lose one of the two to an NFC team because it doesn't impact you as much in the standings. But a loss, man, a loss in Baltimore, you fall to 1-3. The following week, you go to San Francisco, a West Coast game in primetime. Oh, and then, by the way, you get a short week before you take on Russell Wilson and the Seahawks and the Patriots after that. So if you lose this week, you're at 1-3. Even if you win two of those three, which doesn't seem likely, you're still sitting there at, I guess, 3-4, which isn't bad, but not good either. Not where you want to be. I told you a couple weeks ago after the Titans game, one of my best friends texted me. Said he was considering, he's a Browns fan, said he's going to drive his car. I don't know if it was off a bridge. But anyways, Monday morning, he texted me and he said, Browns will be lucky to win 6 games this year. Freddie will be fired by the end of the year. Just watch. That's what I'm talking about, man. These are true Browns fans. This is what I said at the beginning of the year. These are true Browns fans. They get that things never go their way. This is why I wasn't as hyped on Cleveland as most people have been, because this is a team that, unfortunately, and I'm not saying it's anything of their own fault, they might be cursed for all we know. Cleveland just always seems to, I don't even want to say find a way, but just end up on the wrong end of the stick. Is that a phrase? Maybe I should stick with things I know. Browns fans, don't panic unless you lose this Sunday at Baltimore. So a lot to look forward to in the AFC North, right? A couple of 0-3 teams on Monday night, and then Cleveland and Baltimore before that on Sunday afternoon. And really, in the long run, that might be a game we look back at in December as what decides the division, as Cincinnati and Pittsburgh clearly going nowhere. By the way, I think the San Diego Chargers back in the 90s are the only team to start 0-3 and make the playoffs. We'll see how they end up. I don't think Pittsburgh or Cincinnati. Although Pittsburgh's back. Cincinnati, they missed a field goal in that first game against Seattle, and you never know what's going to happen. But Cincinnati loses by 1 point in Seattle on the road in week 1. Everyone's kind of excited. Seattle is a good team at home, and they look like a pretty decent team overall. But the Bengals right there, they make that field goal. Maybe they pull it off. Last week, an absolute garbage holding call on a kickoff return wipes out a touchdown. They end up losing in the final minutes there. It's just the NFL, man. It's a game of inch. And look, I'm saying that about the Bengals. I'm sure there are a handful of teams out there I don't follow as closely that could easily say the same thing. You look at the Bucks. Tampa could be 2-1, if not for the magic of Danny Dimes. More on him momentarily. Atlanta's a team I'm kind of sick of. They're 1-2 now. I just don't get them. They're hard to figure out. They're kind of like Indianapolis was in those years with Andrew Luck. Maybe not that good, but it's tough. All right, I told you at the beginning, ugly and beautiful. We're through 3 weeks. I want to do 3 things that are ugly, 3 things that are beautiful. In the NFL, they're just kind of one of those things where I had little things to say on stuff, but not a lot. If this were a radio show, we would have music right now. Ugly and beautiful, 3 things. First of all, and I just touched on this a little bit, beautiful about football, the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen's good. BillsMafia gives us 3 top-tier viral videos every Sunday morning. ESPN should, really all the pregame shows, just replace your stupid Sunday countdown shows with multiple live cameras from outside of Ralph Wilson Stadium. Those people, that's the best fan base in football. I don't want to be a part of them because they're crazy. And oh, by the way, they avoided, I remember I was in Vegas this year, and I saw it on one of the TVs when they traded for Antonio Brown, and Antonio Brown said no. The Bills dodged that bullet. They're 3-0. They've got 48-year-old Frank Gore playing running back for them. Their head coach looks like Bill Burr a little bit. I love this team. Frank Gore, by the way, in the same draft class as Sean Merriman and Braylon Edwards. He's a running back, and he's still playing. I love the Bills, man. Bills Mafia, I would love to see them take the NFC East. I know it won't happen, but let me dream. That's beautiful about football. All right, ugly about football, these CBS promos during games. There's nothing worse than when your team is just getting battered. You're in an awful, frustrated mood, and you're sitting there thinking about putting your head through the wall, and then young Sheldon comes on the screen. He's little, but he's smarter than all of us idiots sitting at home watching grown men collide with each other. It's like CBS knows that at least 50% of the country is angry and they just want to pile on our misery, and they have to show us this stuff that they think's funny. I know in the Young Sheldon promo, look, it might be a good show. I'm sure that little kid's maybe not. I don't know. I saw Jim Parsons, by the way, shooting a movie in New York City a couple weeks ago. That was cool. I'd never seen like an actual Hollywood movie being shot. I've seen a lot of independent movies and stuff like that around New York City. But it was cool to be down there, and they had all this cool stuff, all these old cabs. And then they shot this one scene of Jim Parsons just walking down a dark street like 7 times. And there's all these drunk hooligans just standing around watching. It was very cool. But anyways, Young Sheldon, I've had enough of you during my NFL games. Excellent. Beautiful about football. Number 2, Gardner Minshew. Here's what I like about this, man. Jacksonville deserves this. I know there aren't a ton of Jaguars fans, but the ones who are there are hardcore fans. And you gotta be, really, to love a franchise like that. By the way, they probably get bashed a little more than they should. They've had some good years. They've been in their short existence, 20 years now? 25? I think it is 25. And they've been to at least 2 AFC Championship games, and really kind of should have beat the Patriots that one year. People don't talk about that Miles Jack turnover that I don't remember got wiped out or what, but I remember thinking they could have won and should have maybe won that. But Gardner Minshew, I hope this is a guy. Jacksonville deserves it. He's so much fun in an age of quarterbacks that are, we've got some fun guys. I think Mahomes can be fun. He kind of relishes that. Look, Patrick Mahomes kind of a nerd, right? He kind of embraces that. Oh, gee, shucks, I love it. But we need more characters, right? Peyton Manning was great, but when it came to football, he was more serious. We need more guys like Gardner Minshew. I'm happy about that. Let's move on. Ugly about football. And this is something that I've recognized as I try to get more listeners to the podcast via Instagram. NFL Instagram culture has got to be one of the stupidest things I've seen in my life. Twitter's okay. Twitter, you can pick and choose better, but Instagram culture is just drowned with rankings that don't make sense, people arguing over things no one cares about. All it takes is one guy to put out like a picture. Let's say Derrick Henry. I like Derrick Henry, but let's say Derrick Henry has 2 really good games back to back. There'll be one guy out there who puts together a picture with rankings, like a graphic, I guess, more than a picture, and it'll say like top 10 running backs of all time, and he'll like put Derrick Henry 8th, knowing that he doesn't believe that, but it gets people talking. It just gets like 78 people being like, dude, you really think Derrick Henry's the 8th greatest? No one thinks that. But that's all it is rankings and people picking and choosing the narrative they want and running with it, and then people arguing. I'm trying to get more listeners to the podcast on Instagram, but I don't know if I want them listening to the podcast. Most of the people who seem to be in the NFL Instagram culture are not people I want to hang out with. All right, beautiful about football, the final thing, number 3, the Washington Redskins. I love this team. If you're not a fan of them, they are a wonderful thing to watch. If you are a fan of them, that sucks. I'm sorry. You should really move along. And it felt bad. I'm an Ohio State guy. Obviously, I hated that Dwayne Haskins went there because it is a garbage franchise. Last night, they were on Monday Night Football, got blown out. No surprise there. The Bears are a very good team. That defense is monstrous. But last night, they're on national TV. One of the great guys and players they've had over the past 20 years, London Fletcher. They honor him on the scoreboard. They spelled his name wrong. That was cool. Good job, guys. And then, I think it was behind Jay Gruden, a picture came out. You got your water boys on the team, your Bobby Bouchers of the National Football League. And behind Jay Gruden, you saw the Gatorade guy stirring the big drum of Gatorade with a sleeve of plastic cups. Apparently, Dan Snyder not putting spoons in the budget in 2019. They just, time after time. How did Sean McVay survive this franchise? That's something we don't talk about enough. Washington Redskins, I love you. Trade Dwayne Haskins. I hope Case Keenum balls out enough that you guys sign him to an 8-year, $140 million deal, and then you trade Haskins somewhere good. Where would we like to see Dwayne Haskins go? Maybe if Cam can't cut it in Carolina. I don't know if they trade him to an NFC team, though. Yes, they would. They're idiots. There's nothing they wouldn't do. Just trying to browse quickly here to see where he could possibly go. There's a lot of teams right now that are comfortable with their quarterbacks. Maybe Denver. That would be nice. Dwayne Haskins wore a John Elway jersey to his job interview there. Tennessee, reunite him with Mike Vrabel. That would be cool. Don't go to the Dolphins. They are not good. Jacksonville's got Gardner Minshew. Let's stick with him. All aboard. Trade Dwayne Haskins to Denver if you're listening. Bruce Allen, whoever is in charge there at this present time. I do know I have some listeners in Virginia. We'll get to that later. But if you're out there listening in Washington, put Dwayne Haskins somewhere where he will be appreciated. And the final ugly thing about NFL season through week 3, the third thing, and I don't think I'm going to get any complaints here, the officiating. NFL officials have here's what bothers me the most. There's 2 things that really bother me. But the one thing is just how inconsistent it is. I mentioned that hold that went against the Bengals. I mean, that happens on every kickoff return. By the way, if you weren't watching, the Bengals returned a kickoff back for a touchdown in the first half against Buffalo. They got called back on a holding call, and it was one of those holding calls that you could call every play, or at least every kickoff return. It was just... And it was obvious that if the guy, maybe he had a little bit of jersey, but even if he didn't, it was one of those things where the guy wasn't going to catch him. I mean, you're trying to block a grown man and you're both running at full speed in armor. You're going to grab some stuff. It was a bad call. Just the inconsistency with officiating in the National Football League is trash. And then the TV networks are so consumed by it, they try to make it a part of their broadcast. They bring on these officiating analysts. Punch me in the mouth. It's miserable. I don't want to talk about it, let alone have to listen to a boring guy talk about it. These officials, all their lives are trained to be neutral, as they should be, but they're out there on the field. Mike Pereira is really the only one who's good about it. It feels like the other officials are more a PR firm up there. Who was it? I can't remember the name of the guy. I can see him in my head. He was on, when he came on CBS back when this was the first thing, it was one of those situations where every time, was it Mike Carey? Every time he came on, yeah, it was Mike Carey. He just, every time he came on there, he'd be like, well, this is what they're going to call here, Jim, and it would be wrong. Let's do away with this. Show me a commercial. Show me, that's what they need to do with these. That's a great idea, actually, I just came up with. When they have the replays, rather than bring in a former official to analyze it, do the split screen like they have been for advertisements when they say, and now 30 seconds from the Jolly Green Giant. What they need to do instead of that, or what they need to do instead of these officiating rules analysts coming in, they say, here's what they're deciding between. Was it a fumble? Was it not a fumble? One half of the screen, just show replays. We don't need to hear any audio. On the other half of the screen, run your advertisements. Make it a good one. Make it one that's very heavy on audio, so we listen. You're making money. You're not having to pay these rules analysts. Everyone wins there. We get to see what we want. And there's nothing worse, by the way, when there is a replay and you're like, I got to see that again. And then they go to commercial. This is a win-win. I should be an executive at CBS or Fox. Probably Fox. I'm a big fan of Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. And Chris Spielman, probably the best at it in the game. Anyway, so there's your 3 ugly things, 3 beautiful things about the NFL. I want to touch on the 2 New York teams for a second, and then we will get out of here. And here's the reason I want to touch on the 2 New York teams. Apparently the Jets are already just in turmoil. I was at their Monday night game last week against the Browns. Fans there just seemed unhappy, and that's understandable. Adam Gase, I think, is going to be one of those guys who we're going to look back on in a few years when the Jets are on their second head coach since him. And we're going to realize he's a coordinator. There have been guys like this over time. Wade Phillips, a great example. Amazing defensive coordinator wherever he goes. Just couldn't really cut it as a head coach. And maybe he wasn't in the right situation for him. Adam Gase is just a weirdo, right? Every time he has a press conference, there's 7 new memes by these nerds on NFL Instagram. He's a strange guy. When he announced Sam Darnold had gone down, you would have thought it was something a lot more serious than mono. He was dejected. Adam Gase is a coordinator. It's unfortunate the Jets couldn't realize that, and I wasn't anti-Adam Gase. He's just not. There's certain qualities you need to have as an NFL head coach, and being a leader is obviously one of them. We saw this with Hugh Jackson in a different light. Hugh Jackson, as a coordinator, successful everywhere he's been, particularly Cincinnati. He had Andy Dalton not broke his thumb, I think in 2015, Andy Dalton would have finished top 5 in the MVP vote with Hugh Jackson as his coordinator. Hugh Jackson was down there when Atlanta had all those wide receivers when Matt Ryan first came into the league. I think Roddy White and then Julio Jones. Hugh Jackson, though, not a leader. Just doesn't really get when he doesn't get how to delegate people, how to lead people. Adam Gase, I think, kind of the same way. Great mind, great at the X's and O's, goofball human being. And we see that a lot with smart people, right? See Mark Zuckerberg speaking to Congress? Strange person. Daniel Jones, the other New York team, the Giants. Looks great. Good for him. Happy for him. But let's pump the brakes on all these. Well, we got to apologize to Dave Gettleman takes. No, you don't. He still has proved nothing. Daniel Jones looks great. That's excellent. I love the nickname Danny Dimes. That's my favorite nickname right now. Football is better when the Giants are relevant. The NFC East could use someone else. The Eagles don't really seem willing to run away with this division for 5 years like it feels like they should. The Cowboys are good, but they have yet to really prove that they can consistently, I don't know. Do we buy into the Cowboys yet? Are we sure Dak Prescott is going to be that great in 5 years when some of those guys move away with different contracts? Because you can't keep all those guys. You paid Zeke a boatload of money. Daniel Jones looks great. I'm happy for him. I hope it works, but let's pump the brakes. We can live in the moment. We can enjoy this. We can have fun with it. But let's not apologize to Dave Gettleman. And, we'll see what happens with Daniel Jones. Baker Mayfield looked great at times. Now, I've got texts from my Browns friends asking me if he maybe was masked a little bit last year. I don't think that's the case, by the way. I think Baker Mayfield, look, man, the NFL's not easy to gel. We see this all the time and people forget it. It's not easy to just add some pieces. And by the way, lose some pieces. That offensive line, not good. When you play a team like the St. Louis Rams, who are now in Los Angeles, whatever, and they've got Aaron Donald and Clay Matthews, it's not easy when you don't have a decent offensive line for your quarterback to find a rhythm. Baker Mayfield, he's going to be fine. He's still your franchise quarterback. But I said all along, all offseason, this idea that he was just going to come along and light the world on fire. Do you not watch the NFL? Do you not realize the best quarterbacks in the league are closer to 40 than they are 30? Daniel Jones might have a great year. I hope he does, but you got to do it in this league for a few years before you can convince me anyways that it's going to be a consistent thing. We saw this with Jameis Winston, right? He had some really nice games. That's a better example because we're farther removed from it. He went into 2017. People forget, into 2017, a lot of people really liked Tampa Bay because Jameis Winston had kind of taken a few steps forward. He was one of those popular, I say that in air quotes, popular dark horse MVP candidates going into 2017. And Jameis Winston just hasn't been able to take that next step. And you have to do that in the NFL. So Daniel Jones, one game in, and there's a ton of examples like that, by the way. Tebow, Sam Bradford, Ryan Tannehill, the list goes on. Colin Kaepernick's a guy who gets brought up for other reasons. But remember, Colin Kaepernick, at one point in time, looked like the next great thing in the NFL. Made it to a Super Bowl, and then, look, people can say what they want about him being blackballed by the NFL. He got beat out by Blaine Gabbert for the starting quarterback job in San Francisco. Colin Kaepernick just lost a step. And again, is he one of the top 64 quarterbacks in the world? Probably. But people don't like celebrity quarterbacks. That's the same reason Tebow's not in the league. But that's just another example. All these guys examples of how quarterbacks have looked great for a minute. Rex Grossman made it to a Super Bowl and then faded over time. Saquon Barkley out for a while. That's no fun. We'll see what we can do. Pick up Wayne Gallman on your fantasy waiver. Maybe. We'll see. Hey, social media shout outs. I'm on Twitter at Matt Edwards, on Instagram at Good Old Matthew. If you're listening from afar, I would be curious to know how you've heard about the podcast. My heavy listenership in Ohio. New York is second. Illinois, Michigan coming in there. But like Michigan, and then I mentioned I've got some listeners I see in Virginia. I've got it pulled up here. Virginia, Washington, Idaho. I'm not even fishing for follows here. I just want to know if you're listening from those states, how you heard about the podcast, so I can continue to spread it out. Maybe some people, your friends, would want to hear it too. If you do like the podcast, tell your friends, tell your family, your grandpa, your Uncle Rick, the school bus driver of your children to tune in. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get better. Appreciate everyone tuning in. By the way, right before this, got really distracted. The trailer for that new Adam Sandler movie, that looks wild. Kevin Garnett's in it. I tweeted it out at Matt Edwards if you're, want to be on Twitter. I'm looking at it right now and trying to talk at the same time. Anyways, good way to end the podcast by stammering through and talking about Adam Sandler, another New York Jets fan. Sandler's a man. If you're one of those people, by the way, who doesn't think Adam Sandler's funny, and I get he had some duds there at the end, but if you don't think Adam Sandler's funny, by the way, a stand-up special on Netflix from last year, absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. A lot of variety as well as stand-up. But if you're one of those people who thinks Adam Sandler sucks, and he has at time, I feel bad for your childhood if you're one of those people. Absolute classics. Big Daddy, Mr. Deeds, two of my favorites. Big Daddy's one of those movies that anytime it's on, you stop and watch at least 20 minutes worth if you are still living in the early 2000s and have cable. The Waterboy, kind of goofy, but for its time was a hit. You look back at it now, it's not as funny, but still something I like to watch. But those movies like Mr. Deeds, Big Daddy, I'm missing out on some. That's My Boy, I really liked. If you don't like Adam Sandler, go back, study him, enjoy him. All right, this has been fun. Thanks for tuning in. It's a Good Old Football Podcast. If you like it, tell your friends. If you have time, give it a rating. That would make me happy. Week 4 going to be a lot of fun. Appreciate everyone tuning in. We'll see you back here for Week 5. It's been the Good Old Football Podcast.